They told me I should smile more, that if I just stayed quiet and let the men talk, everything would turn out fine. I tried that for the first 20 years of my life, and all it got me was invisible. My name is Sierra Maddox, and I was born into a legacy I was never meant to inherit. My father, Grayson Maddox, was the kind of man who left shadows bigger than buildings. Maddox & Co. had been in our family for 3 generations, a chain of high-end auto dealerships across the South, known for its power and prestige. From the outside, we were a picture-perfect family, but behind closed doors, I was always told, "This will be your brother's one day." Hunter was the golden child. 2 years older than me, he was given the keys to everything: the cars, the company, the attention, the respect. I, on the other hand, was expected to play the role of the dutiful daughter, smart enough to earn scholarships, polite enough not to outshine him, and compliant enough to disappear in family meetings. I didn't disappear. I watched. How my father only taught Hunter the business, how my mother turned a blind eye to it all, how I was never invited to the annual board meetings even though I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and marketing. I watched the way they all underestimated me and how much they would regret it later. Then came the funeral. My father's death wasn't sudden. Cancer had been eating at him for 2 years, but the finality of it shook the ground beneath me. I sat between Hunter and my mother at the front pew, dressed in black, eyes dry. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I knew what was coming. 3 days later, the will was read in the oak-paneled office of our family lawyer. I had memorized every square inch of that room as a child, the smell of cigar smoke soaked into the books, the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, the way the windows never quite closed all the way. My father's voice was gone, but his words pre-recorded rang out from the speaker. "To my son, Hunter Maddox, I leave the entire Maddox estate, including all business assets and holdings. He will carry on the family name with honor." I didn't hear the rest. My ears went numb. I couldn't breathe. He left me nothing. Not the beach house where I learned to swim. Not a share in the company I studied for. Not even the Mustang he taught me to drive in. Just nothing. I turned to look at my mother. She couldn't meet my eyes. Hunter smirked, like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. That was the day I buried my father. But more importantly, that was the day I buried the old version of myself. I left the office without a word. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. But inside, something cracked open. If they wanted to write me out of the family legacy, I'd make them rewrite the history books. Not only would I reclaim the Maddox name, I'd make sure that when people said Maddox, they didn't think of my father or my brother. They'd think of me, Sierra, mother of King Maddox. And I was just getting started. There's a moment between betrayal and vengeance where the world goes completely still. For me, it lasted 3 days. I didn't eat, didn't answer calls, didn't even open the blinds. I just laid on my childhood bed in the room they never bothered to redecorate, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old house, hearing my name echo in my own head like a curse. Sierra Maddox, the invisible daughter, the afterthought. Then something snapped. I stood up, walked to the closet, pulled out every old box labeled college stuff, and tore them open. Resumes, certificates, awards, all the proof of everything I'd accomplished without anyone's help. I wasn't Hunter. I didn't need Daddy's name to build something. I just needed something bigger than their approval. So I made a plan. I wasn't going to fight for what was fair. I was going to take what was mine. But I knew I couldn't do it from home, not while Hunter played CEO in my father's old chair and my mother acted like I didn't exist. So I packed my bags, sold the car I rebuilt in college, and bought a one-way train ticket to Atlanta. Why Atlanta? Because that's where Maddox & Co. was expanding and where they were weak. Hunter didn't know how to negotiate city permits or navigate real estate boards. I did. I had studied every inch of his operation from the shadows, and now I was going to hit him in the place he thought he owned, his future. I moved into a studio apartment the size of a closet with a mattress on the floor and cockroaches in the walls. I didn't care. I wasn't there to live. I was there to build. By day, I worked under the radar at a boutique real estate firm, watching where the Maddox brand was setting up their new showrooms. By night, I studied the competitors, the lawyers, the zoning loopholes. I didn't sleep much, but every hour I put in made me sharper. 3 months in, I found my opening. A small dealership in East Atlanta had gone bankrupt, but still had the perfect property and a loyal client base. The owner, a retired woman named Bernice, had been screwed over by Maddox and Co. when Hunter pulled out of a handshake deal at the last minute. She hated the Maddox name, which made her love me. I sat across from her at a dusty desk, looked her in the eye, and said, "My last name's Maddox too, but I'm not one of them." She smiled, slid a folder across the desk, and said, "Then make them regret ever crossing me." I bought the property with the last of my savings and a loan co-signed by Bernice herself, and in that moment, Maddox Motors was born. Not a franchise, not a copy, my own empire. A Maddox name built by the daughter they tried to erase, and I was just getting warmed up. The day the Maddox Motors sign went up, I felt something crack in the universe, like a slap across Hunter's perfect, smug face, and he hadn't even seen it yet. It wasn't a massive grand opening. No ribbon cutting, no champagne, just me, a power drill, and a red and white logo I designed myself at AM while half asleep and fully furious. But it was mine. Every screw I tightened into the front of that building felt like a piece of my identity coming home. The first week, no one came. Then a man in a torn Braves jacket walked in asking if I could fix up his '09 Charger. I told him not only could I fix it, I'd make it run better than it did brand new. I stayed after hours working on it myself. When I handed him back the keys, he looked stunned. "No shop has ever treated me like a human," he said. That was the beginning. One customer turned into five. Five turned into 20. The next month, I hired 2 Tex women who'd been fired from Hunter's operation for not fitting the image. Maddox Motors became known as the place where the outcasts fixed the rides of the forgotten. We didn't just repair engines, we rebuilt people's trust. And I didn't do a single dollar of paid marketing. You know what I did? I sent flowers to every dissatisfied customer Maddox and Co. had left hanging, with a card that said, "There's more than one Maddox in town. The right one's waiting." The calls started flooding in. By month 4, we had a waiting list, and that's when Hunter found out. He showed up in a navy blue Audi, wearing that same smug expression he'd worn the day of the will reading. Only this time I had leverage. "You think this little garage makes you a businesswoman?" he sneered, stepping out like he owned the pavement. "You're embarrassing the family." "No," I said, wiping grease off my hands with a rag. "I'm correcting its history." He laughed. "I should sue you for using our name." I tossed a rag at his feet. "Our name, Hunter, not yours." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time and not liking what he saw. "You're going to regret this." "No." I smiled. "You are." He left with a tire screech and a bruised ego, but I knew this was just the beginning, because now that I had his attention, I was going to take his crown. Hunter didn't sue me. He did something worse. He started copying me. 2 weeks after his visit, Maddox and Co. launched a PR campaign about family values and community trust. Suddenly, their glossy showrooms were plastered with images of smiling mechanics shaking hands with customers, the exact kind of thing I'd been doing authentically. But you know what can't be faked? Reputation. While Hunter was busy hiring influencers and launching generic hashtags, I was rebuilding wrecked minivans for single moms and recording every grateful hug, every tearful thank you, every before and after miracle on my cheap but loyal Instagram page. I didn't need perfect lighting. I had stories and people talk. One afternoon, a man in a tailored suit walked into my shop. He looked out of place, adjusting his Rolex like it didn't quite fit his wrist. "You Sierra Maddox?" he asked. "That's me. I represent a private equity firm interested in minority-owned businesses with rapid growth trajectories." I raised an eyebrow. "You're looking to invest?" "No," he said, smiling slightly. "I'm looking to buy." I laughed in his face. He offered me 7 figures. I still laughed, because what he didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that I wasn't just running a business. I was reclaiming a birthright. But his visit gave me an idea. If I was already getting buyout offers, then I had leverage. I could do more than compete with Hunter. I could outgrow him. So I hired a consultant, a woman named Naya, former marketing director for a Fortune 500 brand who'd quit to start her own firm. She didn't talk down to me. She didn't flinch at the word revenge. She understood. We rebranded everything. Same heart. Bigger ambition. New logo. New uniforms. A brand story that punched viewers in the gut and made them root for the underdog. And then came the real move. I bought a second location. Right across the street from Hunter's new Midtown showroom. The paperwork took months. The build-out, even longer. But when the neon sign of Maddox Motors, home of the real deal, lit up on opening night, the internet exploded. Local news ran the story with the headline, "Siblings, Showrooms, and a Southern Legacy. The Battle of the Maddoxes." Hunter was livid. I was just getting started. The first time a customer crossed the street from Hunter's glass palace to my gritty garage, I knew the war had officially begun. It was a Monday morning, sharp wind in the air, and I was under a lifted Dodge Ram when I heard someone shout, "Hey, are you the Maddox who actually knows what the hell she's doing?" I slid out, wiped the oil from my forehead, and saw him, a middle-aged man in a designer coat and confused eyes, glancing back across the street like he just realized he'd been scammed. "Name's Wallace," he said, holding out his hand. "I just spent $4,000 over there and my truck's still coughing like it smokes camels. Think you can fix it?" I didn't just fix it. I rebuilt the whole exhaust system myself for half the price and double the performance. He posted a review that night, tagging both our businesses. His caption? "The wrong Maddox sold me lies. The right one sold me trust." It went viral. And like a dam breaking, the customers came flooding in. But success has a dark side. While my customer base grew, so did the pressure. I was working 18-hour days, running between both locations, barely sleeping. Naya warned me to pace myself, but I couldn't afford to slow down, not when Hunter was bleeding from every side and starting to lash out. He filed 3 cease and desist letters. All got thrown out. He tried to bribe my staff. None of them took the bait. He even posted a viral TikTok accusing me of family betrayal, as if I hadn't been betrayed first. But that's when I realized something important. I wasn't just winning the market. I was winning the narrative. People weren't just supporting Maddox Motors because of the quality. They were choosing me because they saw themselves in my story. The overlooked, underestimated, and underpaid finally taking back what was rightfully theirs. So I leaned into it. We started a campaign called #BuiltByTheForgotten, showcasing our team, our customers, their struggles, their grit. No corporate polish, just raw, real people fixing real problems. And it hit like thunder. By the end of the quarter, we had tripled our revenue. And Hunter, he started laying off staff. He didn't know what to do. He had Daddy's name but not Daddy's instincts. He had the spotlight but none of the substance. And then I found the one thing that would finally destroy him. Hidden deep inside a contract from his failed expansion deal in Florida was a signature, one that wasn't supposed to be there. Forgery, fraud. If I played it right, it wouldn't just ruin his reputation. It would bury the entire empire he inherited. And I would be there with a smile, watching it all collapse. It took me 3 sleepless nights and 2 black coffees too many to confirm it, but there it was. A forged signature, plain as day. Hunter had submitted a false co-investor signature to secure a commercial property in Tampa under Maddox & Co.'s name. The deal had quietly fallen through, which explained why it never made headlines. But what he didn't realize was that every failed deal leaves a paper trail. And I knew exactly where to dig. The original investor, a tech consultant named Jared Beck, had no idea his name had been used. I tracked him down through LinkedIn, posed as a journalist doing a piece on Southern dealership expansions, and got him on a Zoom call. When I showed him the document, his face went pale. "I never signed that," he said. That's not even my handwriting." He looked like someone had just told him he'd been framed for murder, and in a way, he had. That was all the confirmation I needed. I consulted a lawyer, one of Bernice's old connections from her car-selling days, a retired contract litigator named Edna, who smoked like the world was ending and cussed like punctuation, forgery, fraud, and misrepresentation, she said, flipping through the papers. I'd eat this man alive in court. I asked her if I should go public. She stared at me over her glasses and said, "Do you want revenge, or do you want everything?" I chose both. So we didn't leak it right away. We planned. While Edna built the case, I expanded operations, opening a third Maddox Motors location in Charleston. Hunter, meanwhile, was hemorrhaging. His investors were nervous, his staff was overworked, and the public narrative had shifted entirely in my favor. The media now referred to me as the real Maddox. Hunter was furious. He sent a personal email. "You've made your point. Stop before you ruin everything." I replied with a screenshot of the forged document. No words, just a nail in his coffin. 2 days later, I received an official letter. Maddox & Co. was being investigated by the State Commerce Commission. The empire was cracking. But I wasn't done. I wanted everyone to see it fall. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. Gray skies, light drizzle, poetic, really. The kind of morning where old empires collapse and new legacies rise. I didn't show up in a business suit. I wore my coveralls, the same ones I'd been wearing since day one at my first shop, oil-stained, patched at the knees, with Sierra M embroidered over my chest in red thread. I walked into the State Commerce building like I owned it. Hunter was already there, pale, fidgety, jaw clenched so tight you could see it pulsing from across the room. He was flanked by 2 lawyers in overpriced suits who looked like they knew the storm was coming. The hearing room wasn't dramatic. No jury box, no cameras. But I didn't need spectacle. I just needed the truth to be louder than his money. Edna was magnificent, calm, methodical, ruthless. She laid out the forged documents like playing cards, stacking each one with witness statements, financial records, and legal precedent. Jared Beck even gave a recorded video testimony stating, under oath, that he never signed any agreement and never gave Hunter authorization to use his name. Hunter stammered, denied, blamed interns. But it was too late. They suspended his business license pending further criminal investigation, and just like that, the mighty Maddox & Co. went silent. News outlets picked it up fast. Southern Auto Dynasty falls under fraud investigation. But the headline that made me cry was from a local outlet. The wrong Maddox lost everything, the right one built it back. That night, I didn't celebrate. I drove to the old farmhouse where it all started, where I once begged my father to believe in me, where I stood behind Hunter at that will reading. Feeling invisible, I lit a small fire in the backyard, tossed in the copy of his cease and desist letters, watched them burn. Then I opened my laptop and clicked publish on something I'd been working on for months, the Maddox Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping young women in trade careers get the tools, training, and opportunities they needed to build their own legacies. I wasn't just reclaiming my name. I was rewriting its meaning. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't angry. I was at peace. The thing about power is once you taste it, you start seeing how small your old world really was. After the hearing, I became more than a business owner. I became a symbol. Women I'd never met were tagging me in stories about how they left toxic jobs, started welding schools, opened garages of their own. My inbox was flooded with messages from single moms, queer mechanics, immigrant daughters. They didn't want advice. They just wanted to say, "Thank you for proving we can." But while the world celebrated me, there was still one battle left. My mother. She disappeared after the will reading. No phone calls, no emails, nothing but silence. I hadn't seen her in over a year, and part of me thought she'd moved away to avoid the shame of watching her daughter go to war with her golden boy. But that wasn't the truth. She was still in town, living in the same house, and still pretending I didn't exist, until she showed up. One night, after closing the shop, I found her sitting on the hood of my car in the garage parking lot. She looked older, tired, like someone who'd lived her whole life wearing a mask and had finally forgotten how to take it off. "I saw the news," she said. I didn't answer. I just crossed my arms and waited for whatever she rehearsed in the mirror. "You always had your father's stubbornness," she added. "But maybe that's not a bad thing." I let out a bitter laugh. "Now you say that? After choosing Hunter over me? After pretending like I was invisible?" She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just nodded slowly. "I failed you." And for a second, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt exhausted. All these months fighting, burning, building, I'd never stopped to grieve. To realize that some people you love will never come back, even if they're still alive. I started packing up the house. She continued. "Your father's office. There's something there. Something you should have." I didn't want anything from that man, but something in her tone made me follow her. The next morning, I stepped into that room where my dreams had once been dismissed like background noise and found an old dusty box. Inside, a letter, addressed to me, dated 3 days before the will was read. "Sierra, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to tell you while I was alive. I let my fear of tradition blind me to your brilliance. I know what you're capable of. I always did. I just didn't know how to love a daughter who didn't need my help. I'm sorry, Dad." I read it 3 times before I let it sink in. My father hadn't changed the will, but he knew he was wrong. And he left me the one thing Hunter could never claim, his respect. The letter should have given me closure, but instead, it lit a fuse. I had fought for so long to reclaim the name Maddox, not just from Hunter, but from a legacy built on control, silence, and masculine pride. My father respected me, maybe, but he still left the company to a man who had forged deals, silenced competition, and nearly destroyed our name in public scandal. I didn't want his apology. I wanted change. That night, I called Edna again, but not for legal help this time. "I want to turn Maddox & Co. into a cooperative," I said. "A what?" she asked, half laughing, half choking on her cigarette. "A mechanic-owned business. Everyone gets a share. We train young women. We hire ex-cons who couldn't get work. We build something from scratch, and no one ever gets to erase anyone again." There was a long pause. Then, "Goddamn, kid, you're more dangerous with hope than you ever were with revenge." She agreed to help me restructure everything. The paperwork was brutal, the logistics even worse, but I had fire. And now, I had a team. Bernice, my ride-or-die sales queen, took over public outreach. Andrea, a single mom who used to clean garages, became head of operations. Even my ex-mentor, a man who once told me cars ain't for pretty girls, called and asked if I needed tools. I told him no, but I hired his daughter. The new Maddox & Co. launched 3 months later. No suits, no boardrooms, just steel, sweat, and stories. We held a reopening party at the Charleston location. Press showed up. So did every woman who had ever walked away from something toxic and built something better. Hunter didn't attend, but I knew he saw it, because the next day, he posted a picture from some sad beach resort with a caption that read, "Sometimes walking away is peace." Funny, he didn't walk away. He got chased out, and the world didn't forget. The documentary crew that had once profiled our family business came back. Only this time, they wanted my story, not the fall. The rebuild. The camera lights were warmer this time, not like before, when I was framed as the overlooked daughter or Hunter's rebellious sister. Now, the documentary crew followed me, a woman who had been burned, betrayed, and buried, but still stood taller than ever. They filmed me tightening bolts in the shop, leading staff meetings, hugging Bernice while we laughed at old dealership flyers. They captured Sierra Maddox as she really was, unfiltered, unafraid, and finally free. But the final scene didn't belong to me. It belonged to Maya. Maya was 17, fresh out of foster care, and barely spoke above a whisper when she walked into our shop asking for work. She didn't know how to change oil or hold a wrench, but she showed up every day, early. I took her under my wing, taught her everything I knew. One night, I stayed late while she worked on a busted carburetor. She scraped her knuckle, cursed like a sailor, and then burst out laughing. "I never thought I'd be good at something," she said, eyes wide like she had just discovered magic. That's when it hit me. This was the real legacy. Not revenge, not rebuilding the Maddox name, but breaking the cycle, giving women like Maya a place to stand when the world tried to knock them down. I didn't need my brother's company, or my father's praise, or a piece of a poisoned inheritance. I had impact. When the documentary aired, a month later, it went viral, not because of scandal, but because of hope. Viewers flooded the comments. I cried when Sierra gave Maya that toolbox. Finally, a story where the woman wins without becoming like the men who wronged her. This changed how I see myself. Thank you. Our garage phone rang non-stop for days. Donations, sponsorship offers, mechanics from all over the country, asking if they could open their own chapters. Maddox & Co. had become more than a shop. It had become a movement. And me? For the first time, I wasn't chasing justice. I was the justice. It was the 1-year anniversary of our relaunch. The garage was packed, not with customers, but with graduates, young women who had completed our 6-month mechanic training program. Some of them were now running their own mobile repair trucks. Others had opened their own tiny workshops. All of them wore the same thing on their jumpsuits. Built, not given. The motto had started as a joke between me and Bernice, but it stuck. It became a banner over the office, a badge on every uniform, a mindset. We celebrated that night like we had won the lottery. And in a way we had. Not in dollars, although our books were finally in the black, but in proof. Proof that women didn't need a man's approval to succeed. Proof that broken people could build unbreakable futures. But as the music died down, and the girls packed up their toolkits, a familiar face walked through the open garage door. Hunter. He didn't wear his usual smugness. No silk button-down, no watch. Just a plain tee and jeans that looked like they hadn't seen an iron in weeks. For a second, everyone went quiet, then he nodded at me. "Can we talk?" I didn't want to, but I was no longer the girl who flinched at confrontation. We stepped outside, and he leaned against the brick wall like we were kids again, sneaking cigarettes. "I've been sober for 7 months," he said. "Therapy too. Guess losing everything made me see what I'd become." I crossed my arms. And I wanted to say, "Not sorry." That'd be too easy. I wanted to say, "You were right. You were always the better Maddox." That almost made me laugh. Almost. "I'm not a Maddox anymore," I said quietly. "I'm just Sierra, and that's enough." He smiled, not out of charm, but surrender. Then he left, just like that. No dramatic apology. No begging for partnership. Just an end. And strangely, that's what I'd needed all along. Not a win. A closure. I didn't realize how heavy the Maddox name had been until I finally let it go. That night, I stood alone in the shop, lights dimmed, the air thick with motor oil and memory. The tools were hung in perfect rows, the workbenches wiped clean, but my hands trembled slightly as I reached for a frame I hadn't touched in years. It was the first business license we'd ever filed back when my father ran the show, and my name didn't even appear on the document. Just Maddox & Co. in thick, old-fashioned print. I smiled bitterly as I looked at it. That company had denied me, erased me, buried me. Now it was mine. And yet, it wasn't who I was anymore. I walked to the back of the garage, where our new plaque hung. Built, not given, a cooperative garage for women and futures. That's what I'd built. Not a revenge business. Not a rebuke to my brother. A home. Suddenly, I heard footsteps light. Hesitant. It was Maya again. She'd forgotten her jacket, but she stood there, frozen in the doorway. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just saying goodbye." She tilted her head. "To what?" "To who I used to be." She stepped closer. "Can I tell you something?" I turned. "I used to think women like you didn't exist. I thought all powerful people wore suits and had cold hearts. But then I saw you. And now, I wanna be like that. Like you." That did it. The tears came before I could stop them. She hugged me fast, tight, no hesitation. The kind of hug you give someone who saved you when you didn't even know you were drowning. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as someone's daughter, not as someone's rival, just as me. The final scene wasn't scripted. No lights, no camera crew, just a soft Sunday morning, the shop quiet, sunlight pouring in through the front windows. I sat at my desk, coffee in one hand, and the latest issue of Women Who Rebuild in the other. On the cover, me, covered in grease, a wrench slung over my shoulder, and the words, "The girl they overlooked now runs a nation of garages." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled, because I remembered every moment that brought me here. My father's cold glances, Hunter's smug grin, that will, that betrayal. The nights I thought I'd never make it. The days I clawed my way up, and the girls, the ones like Maya, the ones I hadn't even met yet, the ones who'd wear this name, not Maddox but built, not given like armor. I stood up and walked to the front door. Outside, a mother and her teenage daughter were waiting, nervous, hopeful. They'd driven 4 hours after seeing the documentary. They didn't want charity. They wanted a chance, and I could give it to them. Because I had built something bigger than vengeance, bigger than legacy. I had built a future. I shook their hands, showed them around the shop, and handed the girl her first set of tools. "You're not just fixing cars here," I said. "You're fixing what they broke in us." She nodded, eyes wide, and I knew she would rise. Just like I had. Just like we all could. This wasn't about the family name anymore. This was about what we became without it. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing anything. I had already won.